In this module, we move from theory to proof. You'll see how DORA expects you to design realistic disruption scenarios, run business continuity and disaster recovery exercises, and use the results to strengthen your organization's digital operational resilience. DORA shifts the focus from "do we have a plan?" to "can we actually stay up and running when things break?" Previously, supervisors often checked whether binders, policies, and business continuity plans existed. Under DORA, the emphasis is on proven capability, how well you can withstand, respond to, and recover from ICT disruptions. Resilience is measured through testing, metrics, and real performance during incidents. The objective is uninterrupted delivery of critical services to customers, not just producing documentation or compensating financial losses after the fact. To implement DORA effectively, you first need a clear map of your critical or important functions, or CIFs. Start from the business perspective. Which services, if disrupted, would seriously affect customers, markets, or your regulatory obligations? Payments, trading, and settlement are typical examples. Then trace each service down to the ICT assets and third parties that support it. This mapping exposes single points of failure, shows where you depend heavily on external providers, and becomes the backbone for risk assessments, testing, and incident response planning. When you design resilience tests, you're effectively designing the storm. Under DORA, scenarios should be severe enough to seriously challenge the organization, yet still realistically plausible. You tune 4 dimensions: how bad the incident is, how likely it is, how complex it becomes, and how long it lasts. Strong scenarios are grounded in real threat intelligence, include both sudden outages and slow burn attacks, and consider impacts across people, processes, technology, and key third parties. Let's make that more concrete. First, picture your primary data center going down because of a fire or major power failure. Under DORA, you don't just assume backups work. You design tests that deliberately simulate that loss and demonstrate you can fail over to another site within your agreed RTO and RPO. Next, consider a regional cloud outage or failure of a key SaaS platform. Here, testing focuses on whether exit plans, alternative providers, or manual procedures actually keep critical services running. Now shift to a cyber siege scenario, where your organization is slowly being occupied by an attacker. Start with detection. Can your SOC reliably spot the intrusion before it reaches critical payment systems? Then move to containment. How quickly can you segment networks, block accounts, or quarantine workloads without breaking core services? Next comes the difficult judgment call. At what point do you shut down a payment rail or channel to protect the wider system? Finally, recovery. Can you restore from clean, verified backups and prove data integrity to regulators and customers? Think of DORA testing as a spectrum rather than a single activity. At the base, tabletop exercises are low friction. You stay in a meeting room, but you rehearse high-stakes decisions, roles, and communications. One level up, technical failover tests are about reality. Can systems actually switch to backups? Can you restore data and do monitoring and runbooks work under pressure? At the top, for critical entities, you have threat-led penetration testing. Intelligent attackers emulate real threat actors to probe your most critical functions. Under DORA, these advanced tests must be run at least every 3 years. Tabletop exercises are structured conversations, where key people walk through a crisis scenario together. Instead of testing servers, you test the human software. Who decides what, how fast, and with which information? They're ideal for rehearsing crisis communications, especially when multiple countries, regulators, or providers are involved. By adding new injects during the exercise, you see how your team adapts as facts change or leaks emerge. For technical failover under DORA, 2 numbers really matter: RTO and RPO. RTO, the recovery time objective, answers how long can this service be down before it's unacceptable. RPO, the recovery point objective, answers how much recent data are we prepared to lose. Failover and restore drills are how you prove these targets are realistic. If live tests can't meet them, your resilience setup, and therefore your plan, is not compliant. Threat-led penetration testing is DORA's gold standard exercise for critical entities. Instead of generic hacking tests, scenarios are built from real threat intelligence, often aligned with TBU. A red team mimics credible attackers. The blue team defends, and a neutral white team coordinates and observes. Crucially, this happens on live production systems. It tests not only technology, but also people, processes, and decision-making under realistic pressure. DORA doesn't let you outsource responsibility, only activities. If a cloud provider fails a resilience test, regulators will still look at your organization, not the vendor. That's why contracts become resilience tools. They need clear rights to involve providers in tests, access results, and demand remediation. You also need realistic exit options. If a critical provider can't meet DORA expectations, you must be able to move or dual source without breaking key services. Under DORA, testing isn't complete when the exercise stops. It's complete when the documentation is solid. Think of this as the audit trail of resilience. You start with a clear test plan that states scope, objectives, and success criteria, so supervisors see the test was risk-based and intentional. You then capture an execution log. What happened in real time, who decided what, when, and why. Next, you perform a gap analysis explaining what failed, distinguishing technical weaknesses from process issues. Finally, you produce a remediation report with actions, owners, and deadlines, formally endorsed and presented to the management body. Operational resilience under DORA relies on a continuous feedback loop. You deliberately stress your environment, let things break in a controlled way, and observe how systems, people, and processes respond. Every weakness you discover becomes an input into learning. You refine playbooks, adjust controls, and update the ICT risk assessment and impact analysis. Then you remediate, fix defects, reinforce monitoring, close process gaps, and verify suppliers' capabilities. And you test again. In this mindset, a failed test is valuable if it prevents a real outage or regulatory incident later. DORA pushes a fundamental mindset shift. Instead of asking, did we pass the audit? The real question becomes, can we take a hit and keep operating? Compliance remains necessary, but it's the floor, not the ceiling. That shift changes behavior. People must feel safe to report weaknesses and near misses early. Risk, IT, and business teams share the same problem, not the same person to blame. And every incident, test, or outage is mined for lessons that permanently strengthen how the organization works. DORA isn't just about avoiding penalties. It's about building resilience capital. Design realistic scenarios that mirror the business services and providers you actually depend on. Use rigorous testing to prove your recovery objectives are real, not hopeful. Then feed results back into budgets, architecture, and contracts. Handled this way, DORA becomes a structured path to stronger trust and lasting competitive advantage.